Okay, we are in class 4 in the book of Genesis. Okay, in the book of Bereshit. All right, last thing we got up to was the story of Cain and Abel, Cain and Hevel. Okay, that's the last thing we got up to. Story of Cain and Abel. Not a very happy story, and don't try that with your own brother at any time. Okay, so now we're starting with the story of Cain and Abel. We said last time that Cain killed Abel. Now, let me ask you a question. We believe that God directs the world, and someone who is not supposed to get a certain negative consequence won't get it. That's a very complicated topic. We actually talk about it in my book a little bit. We talk about exactly how that works. It's very complicated when God interferes with people's free will and not. But the question could be asked, if Abel, Hevel, was such a righteous guy, then how did he get killed? Why didn't God protect him? What did he do wrong? What did he do wrong that that caused him to actually die? Well, what happened? Did Abel do something wrong? Okay, so what did Abel do? It doesn't say what he did anything wrong. Mm-hmm. So let me tell you what the sages tell us. The sages tell us that we know that Cain brought an offering that wasn't accepted, and then Abel brought an offering that was accepted. Now, the sign of being accepted, again, this is obviously we're talking about the book of Genesis, the beginning of time. Things are supernatural in many ways. There was a fire that came down and burnt the offering, and that was the sign that his offering was accepted. It says that when Abel experienced this, it said he gazed at the divine presence. And what that means is, in our terminology, it means that if a person is experiencing godliness, there needs to be a certain level of awe. Because if you're experiencing godliness and you're like, hey, this is great, this is so spiritual, and you don't keep your right parameters, that's a very serious offense. And what Abel did, even though Abel was a righteous person, what happened was that he gazed upon the divine presence when he had this experience, and that was his negative aspect. Okay, so it can't be that Abel didn't do anything wrong, otherwise, if he'd be totally righteous, he'd been protected. All right, that's the story of Abel. Yeah.
Wasn't that Abel's quality though? Like that his name means like vapor, right? That he's like so just like, I'm nothing by Hashem, right?
Right.
So like, are we saying that he like actually like changed from that quality?
No, I don't think. What Michael's listening is he's saying. We said that last time. The word Abel is Hevel, which means vapor. That he didn't think himself as anything. So Michael's saying is that a change of the quality, that when God's presence comes down, he gazed upon. I don't think it's a change of quality at all. It means that what happens is the pleasure of it just drew him in. We see the same thing by when the Jews got the Torah on Mount Sinai. It says that the Atzilei B'nai Yisrael, some of the righteous people, they gazed at the experience in a way that was too familiar, and that was a flaw. So Abel, although he was very righteous, he made that mistake. Okay, now what happens to Cain? What happens to Cain when he goes and he kills Abel? What happens? What's the story? So let's see. God first wants to punish Cain, and the punishment is very, very great. It says that every place Cain is going to go, people are going to chase him to want to kill him. Mm-hmm. And even if he stands still, it says the earth will tremble underneath him. He's called Nov and Nod. He has got no place to go. He has got no place to settle. He can't be in one place. People always want to kill him. And what a deeper meaning of that is, and I'll tell you something that's very fascinating. A human being has what's called Tselem Elokim, is in the divine image. And when you think about it, it's strange that animals have a certain fear of people because animals are generally stronger than people. And very often there are animals that have a certain sense of this is a human being and there's a fear of them. And an animal instinctively senses sometimes if the person is on a level, a certain level of godliness in the person. The Talmud talks about today, if it maybe needs to be two people at once, depends on what level we're on. But originally, there was always a sense, even on one individual, that all the animals were afraid of human beings. And when Cain committed the sin and killed Abel, he lost his divine image. And what happened was the animals were actually not afraid of him and would have attacked him. And that was one of the explanations that he says to God, everyone who sees me is going to kill me. People and animals too. So it says that God gave Abel a sign. And what the sign was, if you return back to a certain degree his divine image, that's probably what the Talmud means. It says he put his letter of his name on him. So Cain then got a certain degree of that divine image back. God gave Cain a sign that not everyone would be able to kill him, and but he didn't get a full forgiveness. Now, let me explain why. Because Cain apparently did tshuva. He repented. He said to God, is my sin so great you can't bear it? God, you bear the heavens and the earth and you contain everything. And I made a mistake. I sinned and I can't be forgiven. Now whoever sees me is going to kill me and I'm going to have all these problems. So God forgave his sin partially. And why only partially? So the commentaries say, Talmud says, here it says that Vayetze Cain milifnei Hashem. Cain went out from before God. And the Talmud says that he went out like a thief who had just stolen something. He thought, oh, I got away with this, great. Like his level of true regret for what he did was not complete. He was like, okay, God relaxed my sentence, and now not everyone's going to kill me. And God promised there'd be 7 generations until Cain would die, and he would protect him. And now, he could be in one place, even though the land would not give its produce to him as before, but he could be in one place. So he felt, okay, good, I got out of it. Okay, so that's the problem. The problem is a human being has to understand, we're going to talk about it as we get to the idea of idolatry, you can't fool God. God knows what you're thinking. So Cain was not fully honest with what was really happening, and therefore his punishment was repealed to a degree. Now, what happened was his father, Adam, saw Cain after he knew he had been decreed this tremendous punishment. He'll be always chased and people. And he said to him, what happened? He said, well, I repented from God. I repented, and God forgave my sin. So Adam was so amazed because he really didn't understand yet the power of what's called tshuva. Tshuva, and I'm using the English word repent, which is a bad translation. It doesn't mean that. Tshuva means returning. You return to obviously to God, and you return to the essence of who you are. That's real returning. Repentance has the connotation of you're smashing yourself, whatever you're doing, but you're not really returning to God and to who you are. But that's the Hebrew word for repentance is tshuva. So Adam's, wow, the power of tshuva. And he begins his repentance process, his tshuva process. Now, what he does now is a little bit strange and problematic. I'm not going to get into the Kabbalistic explanation of these things, but it's very, very fascinating what happened. Adam then wants to fix up his own thing, and he decides to separate from his wife and go. I mean, divorce. I mean, just like he wasn't having marital relations, and he was going through this heavy process of tshuva, of repenting. But the Talmud and the Kabbalists explain that the separating from his wife from so long period, even though it was for the purpose of a holy purpose, it created certain negative forces in the world. We'll just leave it at that right now. And Adam was doing this process of tshuva, and of trying to fix something he did wrong, and he actually separated from Eve for a while, quite a while. And what happens in the end, how he really stops that, is one of the descendants later on actually kills Cain. God protected Cain for a certain amount of time, but when that time was up, there was one of Cain's descendants, his name was Lamech. Lamech was blind, and he was out hunting, but to hunt blind is not such a great idea. Don't try this at home. But but the way he did it, his son would go with him and would say, "Okay, Dad, shoot, pull the arrow, shoot," and so he would shoot. And the son thought he saw an animal, and he said, "Hey, there's an animal!" And the Lamech went and he shot and he killed none other than his great-grandfather Cain. This happened. He ended up accidentally. There's a whole story there. We'll leave what happened, but he ends up being a murderer accidentally. And his wives, he had 2 wives. We'll explain what this was. This was the system in those days, a bad system. But we'll see that in the generation of the flood, people had 2 wives for not good reasons, Pamela. It was not good reasons. I'll tell you why I had 2 wives. Very bad. What they did was they would give one wife an herb that would make them sterile. They would not have children. And that wife was, the wife that they had for whatever, taking to ballroom dancing and to the discos. And the other wife was the wife they had children with. And they did not pay attention to her, and they kind of like whatever to do. And that was the way of this generation, which was very, very bad, but they had these 2 wives. Now, even though in this case, the special thing happened with these 2 wives, they were able to both give birth, but that was the system. They had 2 wives. The wives of Lamech said, "We're not going to have relations with you anymore because we're descendants of Cain, and God said that Cain was going to be wiped out, and we're going to have kids for no reason." So you know what to do. So he went over to Adam. I mean, imagine living in this generation where you can still see the first human being. Yeah. They go to Adam, and Lamech says, "Speak to my wives." And Adam says, "He's right. Okay, you do your thing. You have your live your life. You have your children, and what God chooses to do, He'll choose to do." And so they said to Adam, "You're talking to us? Meantime, you're sitting there trying to repent, and you haven't been with your wife. You're not having children either." And Adam accepted the rebuke, which is really, by the way, an amazing thing. I want to just have a side issue for a moment about accepting rebuke, because there are people, most people don't like to be told they're doing the wrong thing, right? Everyone in Facebook land, no, we don't want to be here doing the wrong thing. And it takes a great person to really admit they're doing the wrong thing. I want to tell you a story about a rabbi. His name is Rabbi Shach. Shach was the great leader of the Jewish people in the past generation. And he used to give a class for thousands of students. I remember I once went to hear his class. It was in Bnei Brak in Israel. And you couldn't even get into the giant study hall. They used to have speakers that would come out into all the side rooms. I couldn't get into the main place. We were in the side room. And he would give his class. And one time he's given the class, he prepares the class, and it was a whole big thing. And one of the students being in the class says his opening point, And he's got a whole hour and a half lecture ready to go. And one student picks up his hand and says, Rabbi, it's very nice what you're saying, but I have a question on you from something that Maimonides said. Now, the rabbi hears the question. I want to tell you something. Rabbi Shach could have taken the student and just made mincemeat out of him.
Yeah.
And said, what kind of question? Because he was smart enough to figure out how to, but he thought it was a real good question. So he went, he took his book and said, it's a very good question. I need to think about it. Closed the book in front of a few thousand people, walked off the podium. Because some kid asked him a good question. He didn't have an answer for it. I wanted to be honest about it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, people don't do that. You're going to make me look bad? No. So Adam takes the rebuke. He takes the rebuke, and he says, you're right. And then Adam goes and he has a child. His name is Shase. And he's called Seth. But what does Seth mean? Doesn't mean anything because it doesn't translate. The word Shase in Hebrew is that God, Shasli ben Acher, gave me another child instead of Abel. Abel had died. Now God, Shasli ben Acher, he gave me another child. The word Shase also means the foundation because Shase, which in English is called Seth, became the foundation of the new world, right? Because Cain's children's descendants would be killed off. Shase will end up being the line of Noah, and so God's going to give a child now give a child to Adam and Eve in lieu of Abel, who's going to be the foundation now for the world. And that child's name is Shase. And Shase was born Musa was born like his father in the image of Adam and Eve. I mean, which is in the godly image. Now, Shase has another child now, and now what happens is we're moving now into a period of time between Adam and Noah. Now, how many generations are between Adam and Noah? Michael, can you answer that question for us?
I actually don't know, but maybe 10?
10! That's a good guess. You got it right. There are 10 generations between Adam and Noah, and we go through them fairly quickly. And the reason we go through them fairly quickly is because they were not righteous. They were very, very, very bad. There were only small pockets of righteous individuals that were in all these generations. And this is important to understand because we know this historically from archaeology, and this is really important to. I'm sorry, I'm gonna. The people in the world degenerate very, very quickly. We have Adam, his son Shase, and his son Enosh, the third generation of people. It means Adam and Eve were prophets. They spoke to God. Shase also was a prophet. You're now the third generation of humanity, and already idolatry starts. In the generation of Enosh, it says, then they started calling the name of God. And that means started calling things God. And this is when idolatry starts. Now, how does idolatry start? Important to know. It starts like this. It starts, people have a rationale. They say, listen, God creates the sun. God creates the moon. The sun gives us light. The sun is the servant of God. Therefore, we need to relate and thank the servant too. So let's do the ceremony and thank the sun. And that's how idolatry started. It started out in the beginning with this rationale that we should thank the intermediaries that are, God's messengers. But that's not the way it's supposed to work. Okay? I mean, I understand the rationale. You say if the king sends me a messenger, his officer, I should be nice to the officer too. But here comes the danger. What happened was they started relating to these sources, these forces in the world, and then they started not only relating to them as the servants of God, they started relating to them as separate powers on their own. And they even had certain mystical powers of seeing the spiritual forces, as we've talked many times, that are in charge of everything in the world. We've explained many times that everything in the physical world has a spiritual force that's above it. Okay, that's called the Sar, the spiritual component parallels it. And what happens is that so these people, the idolaters, start relating to these forces, and then the spiritual force that was above it. But that's idolatry, because there's only one source for everything, and that's God. And you can't relate to any of the between powers, because they're not powers on their own. So that's in already the third generation, idolatry starts. Now, there was a very bad consequence to this. Anyone know what the consequence that happened to them? There was, I guess it's called a tsunami. In the Midrash, it says that the Atlantic Ocean overflowed. I guess it says by a tsunami. I would assume that would be the Atlantic Ocean swelled and overflowed, and a third of humanity was killed. Wow. Okay. Because the world's, you got to realize, like, this is like right from the beginning. This is like the beginning of time. They should have been, they still see Adam and Eve. And the world starts to stray already. And it's really wild. But people were starting to get weirder and weirder and weirder. Even Cain, his descendants, they were the first, how do we say this? They were free spirits. They decided to walk around without any clothes. Yeah, I was thinking about it, but I didn't want to insult all the hippies because, but they actually walked around without any clothes, and it wasn't like Adam and Eve who, when they were not clothed, it was because they were spiritual beings, as we spoke about. Like, we look at our fingernails to remember Adam and Eve, that they were like souls, like translucent, like the soul that exuded from the body. And until they had eaten the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there was no negativity inside them, and therefore there was no focus on the externality of the body, because they looked at a human being and saw a soul with a beautiful casing, right? That's the way we believe. We say that the body is beautiful as a covering and encasing of the soul. But once you now focus on the body and not the soul, you've now deceived the true essence of who you are. So when people were not wearing clothes and they only saw the body, not the soul of the person, that's time to cover up. So Adam and Eve, once they eat the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they had now this ability and this problem to look at the externalities, they realized they had to cover their externals so that people would focus on the internal, right? So I've said that many times. I don't know if we've played on this before, but I'll say it again, Eddie. It's repeating those. I don't know if we've said it on Facebook, but this is the deeper meaning of the Hebrew words for clothing. Clothing, there are three different words for clothing. One is called levush. Levush is your clothes. Levush stands for the phrase lo bosh, no embarrassment. Now, why do you have embarrassment? Why do you need clothes to remove your embarrassment? And I'll tell you why. Because if you understand that you are a soul and you have a physical body that's the beautiful encasing of this soul, like we have a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll has a beautiful covering on top of it. You know, you go in Noahide, you go and you have the Mona Lisa, and if you made the frame around it, out of plastic and Scotch tape, it would be terrible. You have a beautiful, frame for a beautiful picture. So the body as an encasing for the soul, we understand it's beautiful. That's fine. When Adam and Eve, before they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil mixed up, they were souls that were exuding from the body. So if I saw Adam and Eve in the beginning, I would see a soul. And the soul would be the focus. The encasing of the body would not be the focus. Once they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, with good and evil mixed up, and the externality could sometimes overshadow the internality. Once that happened, then they realized they need to put on clothing's levush. There will be no embarrassment, because if you look at me as a body and not a soul, that's embarrassing. You know how great I am? I'm a soul. You're only seeing my body now, which is the secret of advertising, right? Right? And when you know, in America, when you drive down the road and there's a billboard and there's a car, you know, that they're selling a model car, and there's a woman sitting on the car who is scantily clad, the idea is not to say, wow, what a beautiful soul. They're not saying that. What are they saying? They're turning the person into only a physical thing. That's what it is. That's what when people. So if you don't go and cover the body in a way that doesn't allow you to mistake me and think I'm only a body, it's embarrassing, because that's not who I am. I'm much more. Not because the body, but not because the body is inferior and bad. We're not embarrassed about the body. The body's fantastic. But if you think I'm a body, not a soul, that's embarrassing. So clothes is low bosh, no embarrassment. The next word for clothes is called beged. Beged. The Hebrew word beged also means boged, to betray. Why is the Hebrew word beged the same as boged, to betray? Because if you don't put on the clothes, the body will betray who I really am. You will think I'm a body, not a soul. The third word for clothes is me'il, which is called, modern Hebrew is called a coat. A me'il is also the Hebrew word for me'ilah. Me'ilah is a concept when you take something that's holy and use it for something mundane. Right? Something that's holy, but you use it for a mundane purpose. So if I don't put the me'il on, I don't put the clothing on, I've taken the holy thing, which is the body, and now it's being used as mundane. You think it's just the body. It's not the encasing of the soul. So Adam and Eve, before the sin, they didn't need to wear clothes because they saw it in the proper context. Once they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it's mixed up. They had to go and protect the body, that you shouldn't mistake the body, that's who I really am. And that's why we don't cover the hands or the face. The hands or the face are unique to human beings. Animals don't have a partsuf, a face like we have. As I mentioned last week, I don't think I mentioned it on Facebook, so I'll say it again. But it's fascinating. In Hebrew, the word for face is panim. In English, the word face is the same word as facade. Your face is your facade. It's your mask. In Hebrew, the word panim means panim, your inside. It's exactly opposite. The name for face in English is my mask. The name for face in Hebrew is my inside, my panim. It's the portal to see who I really am. Can't imagine something more true. So the face you don't have to cover. The hands, with the dexterity of the hands that can create and build things, you don't cover, because those things are uniquely human, not mistaken for anything other than that. So Adam and Eve, they put on clothes once they realized their level was low. The children of Cain took their clothes off, and they started doing the most abominable things, relationships with every type of relative, this and that, just by literally living like animals. And that's where the world was going. So the third generation is that bad already. Wow. And then it starts to get worse and worse. Okay? I'll say one thing, which is because it's a very, whenever we learn the story of Genesis, as we go through the story of the Torah, as we get later on, things are more our reality. In the very beginning, the world's different. The world is like the beginning of time. And that's also the question that if you look at the amount of years they lived a lot of years. One explanation of that is that the world was different. No pollution, it was very, very different. So all of reality was different in the early years of creation, and the world was still coming into, as we discussed many times, we'll explain more, the first 2,000 years of time from the period of Adam and Eve. God allowed anyone in mankind to find God. It was easy. The world was open. And something very strange happens that you probably read in the book of Genesis and not understood what it is. As this generation is going on, and the 10 generations go from Adam to Noah, we have a little portion in the book of Genesis where it says the following. It says, you can look at it here. It says it's on page. It's on page 20. Second. Yeah, 26. Page 26 and 27. I'll read this to you, and I'll read it to you in the simple explanation. But then we're going to maybe talk about the deeper one, which people have heard about, but might not know the real story. So it says. In verse 1 in chapter 6, it says, it came to pass that man began to increase upon the face of the earth, and the daughters were born to them, the sons of the rulers. Now again, the problem is when you read the Torah in English, you're by definition you have to have it. It's translated. It's not going to have the whole depth of the Hebrew. Plus, there's wrong translations. This is not a wrong translation. It's just a limited translation. The text here, where it's translating the sons of rulers, in the Hebrew, it's called the B'nai HaElohim. So B'nai HaElohim, the word Elohim as a phrase has a lot of different meanings. It could sometimes be referring to God, and sometimes referring to God in the sense of how God runs the world. That's the name of God, controls all of nature. But it also has an implication of a judge or a ruler, which is the way the English is translating it here. Sometimes it also refers to an angel. So the English says here, the sons of rulers saw the daughters of man were good, and they took for themselves wives from whoever they chose. Okay, and then later on, it calls these people, in verse 4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. And also afterwards, when the sons of the rulers would consort the daughters of man who would bear to them. They were mighty, who from old were men of devastation. Nephilim, the English doesn't even translate it. But the Nephilim is the word nafal, means to fall. To fall. So the simple explanation of this text is that these were powerful people and they were breaking all rules. They were grabbing wives from underneath the canopy when they're going to get married to someone. They would just say, "Hey, I'm taking her," because they were strong and they were tough. That's the simple explanation what the English says. The deeper explanation, which the Midrashim explained to us, and the mystical explanation, is that there were two angels who, when man were deteriorating to this point, okay, Shemchazai and Azoel, these two angels, that when man was deteriorating to this point, they, so to speak, again, you have to understand this in a deeper way, said to God, when you want to create man, we thought man was not worthy to be created. We saw that man had free will, humankind has free will. They could choose good or choose bad, and it was going to get bad. And God, you wanted to create them. Why didn't the world just be for the angels, for our spiritual forces that you created? So they said to God, well, if you let us go into the world and take on human qualities, we will sanctify your name. We'll act very righteous. And this is the thing that people have heard about it's spoken about a lot, but this is the source of it, that these angels were actually, according to the Midrash, were allowed to come down in human form into this world. And these are powerful sources that were now put in human form. And this is what's referring to the sons of angels, so to speak, spiritual forces that were now in the world, and with their spiritual power, were actually worse than everyone that preceded them.
Right.
And that's a good rule in general. It's a good rule. When people have more spiritual power, they could also go bad. It's true also for people. And what they were doing is, they saw like these people walking around naked. And the world was falling apart. And what happened was they just started taking what they wanted to take. And that's what it's actually referring to. These people now drove the world even to a more negative state. And we've now gone from the beginning of Adam to a quick deceleration of 10 generations where we've introduced idolatry, right? The generation of Enosh starts with idolatry, and now the people are getting obsessed in illicit relations. And now, in the 10th generation, is a person born named Noah. And Noah, his father already knows, Lemech knows that this person is going to be a great person and is going to help the people. Actually, as a matter of fact, Noah was the first one to invent farm utensils. He comforted the people from their trouble of their work. Noah was born in Torah thinking. The idea of a circumcision is like the idea of finishing the job of perfection. Okay, the idea is that there was a great argument between Rabbi Akiva, a great sage, during the Roman occupation of Jerusalem, of Israel. It was an argument between him and a Roman leader. It was Turnus Rufus. And the Roman leader said to him, he said, what's greater, the work of God or the work of man? You guys claim the work of man is greater. Why? Because you circumcise yourselves. Why do you do that for? The Romans were very much against the concept of circumcision. And it's important to understand because it's the discussion people have today. The Romans said, I don't understand. If you guys believe in God, why are you messing around with his creation? So Akiva brought in front of this Roman ruler, he brought him a loaf of bread and wheat. He said, which one's greater? He says, the bread's greater. That's the point. But it's not that we're saying we're better than God. That's absurd. But what we're saying is that God created the world for us to finish the job. And what happened was that everything is like that. The world was created, as we talked about in the first session, and up to the 6th day of creation, and it was almost brought to its perfection, and humankind had to finish the job. And that's the same thing with taking wheat, making it to bread. God wants us to finish the job, to be a partner, not be a parasite. So the concept of the circumcision was that God created a person, and there was an aspect the person had to be fixed, specifically on the place of desire. He turns the desire to a covenant with God. And Noah, as sometimes happens in the world today, even today, he was born circumcised. Yeah, it's a phenomenon that happens today also. It's brought in Jewish law. Every mola, everybody does circumcision. Sometimes a kid is born without a foreskin. And Noah, as was Adam, was born circumcised. He was born without a foreskin. And that they understood was already a sign of who this was going to be. Prophetically understood Noah was going to be the one to comfort the people or to ease their difficulty, and he was. He became the person who ends up saving humanity. He looks to help the people. He creates the first tools of farming, because what happened was when the curse happened in the sin of Adam, and then it happened furthermore with the story of Cain and Abel, you couldn't farm, they were farming by hand, and there was thorns and thistles, and Noah now ushers in a new era. He eases the challenges of the people. And they name him Noah. Now, I want to say one last thing about Noah, and then we'll leave it for next time. Because we said in this series we're going to talk about the Torah, then we're going to talk about a trait. So I'll say one point about a trait. Noah was a righteous person. Very, very righteous. He spent years rebuking the people. Say, you're acting terrible, illicit relations, idolatry, all these things that are going on. And we'll see theft was happening. We'll see all this for next time. And Noah's rebuking the people. You got to fix it up. You got to fix it up. You got to fix it up. And he cared about the people. He went, like I said, he tried to think how to help them, what to do for them. So he was very great, very great. The problem is I want to discuss with you is that in the verse in the prophets, it says, Kimei Noahuli. These are the waters of Noah. Now, why does God call, in the prophets, it mentions the flood, it calls the waters of Noah? Noah was the one who saved the people from the flood. Why would you, it's like, why would you name a flood after a guy? It's a very dubious honor. It's like when they name the hurricanes, Eddie, if they get to E and they name it Hurricane Eddie, you're not so happy about it. You're like, I don't know a hurricane named after me. I want something good named after me. You name a flood after Noah? Why? So the Midrash says because he didn't pray for his generation. So he's like sort of some way blamed. And that's really weird. He was so good. He was so righteous. He saved people. He said to them, you got to change, you got to change, you got to change. And he's still held accountable because he doesn't pray for them. What happened? What does this mean? What's the trait here? So I want to explain one thing which you have to understand. I've told this many times. Noah was a tzaddik. He was righteous. In life, there's different levels. One level is called a tzaddik, a righteous person, and then the next level is called a chassid, someone who's pious. Now, understand how this works. Let's say I have a certain amount of money and you need some money. Okay? You asked me some money. Now, I should know what is the right thing to do. Okay? Listen, I need this, I need that. You need help you this degree. Let's say I have a debate with a problem with a partner in business. For you to be a righteous person, you need to know what is tzedek, what is the right thing to do, okay? You need to know exactly the line of how much to give, how much not to give. What's the fair amount? Okay, we're business partners. The first thing to do is to be fair. Hey, I put in this many hours. I shouldn't have you doing more work than me. Then you should get more money. So a fair business partner understands what is the righteous line. He's not going to go and take what doesn't belong to him. He's not going to go and let the other guy work an extra minute and split the thing evenly, because why should you work more? That's knowing where the line is. If you don't know where the line of righteousness is, you can never do good because you don't know what's right. And that's what it says in Pirkei Avos. It says, "Ein amaras chassid." A pious person cannot be a fool because you don't know where the line is. You got to know where the line is. You got to know this is what's right. Once you know what's right, there's another level to go a little bit past it. Not necessarily tons. Okay, so I really should give you this amount of money. Yeah, give you a little bit extra. Not just give you all my money, because then I'm going to need to go beg on the streets if I give you all my money. So a person needs to know you got to go a little bit. You should go a little bit past. So the business partner, you want to be a nice guy. Yeah, I'll work an extra few minutes. It's okay. It's all right. Keep it. That's called a chassid. That's going beyond the letter. That's called being pious. Righteous is to do what's right. Pious or a chassid is to do what's a little bit beyond that. And it's a beautiful thing to strive for. Noah did what's right. Noah said, listen, you guys are acting wrong. You guys are acting wrong. And he spent years trying to persuade, trying to do all these things for them. He was a very, very holy and great person. When Noah felt that the people didn't repent, because they didn't, we'll see next time, they were not willing to listen to Noah at all. As a matter of fact, we'll see next time, they said to Noah, he's building this ark. And they said, what are you doing? He said, I'm building an ark because if you guys don't change your ways, you're going to die in the flood. So then they said to him, they said, listen, if we see it happening, we're going to go kill you and break the ark also. Not only are they not going to listen to him, they were going to prevent him from using it. So Noah tried as hard as he could. And then he said at the end, okay, what can I do? What can I do? I tried to. And God said, Noah, even though you're a great, great person, there's another level you can strive for, saying to God, even though they're bums, save them anyway. Now, that's God's calculation. But a human being should strive for that. And I mean, there's a story about, there's a great Rabbi Meir, and these guys lived in his neighborhood, and they kept torturing him, doing all these things, and he was praying that they should get messed up. His wife came over to him and says, what are you doing? Don't do that. Pray that they change. Pray they improve. So there's a certain place, and that's what Noah didn't do. And that's why when we talk about like greatness, we talk about Moshe. Moshe, after the sin of the golden calf, said, God, erase me from the book and don't wipe them out. There's a certain place where persons could try to go, and it's hard to do because we want to do what's right. And that's the first level. Don't try to go past before you could do what's right. Do what's right first. But when you do what's right, then try to go a tiny bit further and say, you know what, I'm going to be a person who could let things go and say, all right, these guys are not, they deserve it. Yeah, well, let them get it. They deserve it. I thank God I didn't see that terrible movie about Noah, but I understood that they made him into some kind of madman, like let them punish him. That's not what it was. He was very righteous, he loved them. But to go and to say, okay, you didn't do it. That was another level that Noah, even though he was great and holy, at a certain point he said, well, this is what they deserve, and okay, I accept it. But a person could strive for even a little bit more to go beyond, to pray that people really fix themselves up and get the best that they possibly can.
Is that the same situation with Abraham coming out of Sodom?
Yeah, very good. The Zohar says that there were 3 different levels. There was Noah, who didn't pray for the people, and then Abraham, who prayed for the people, but was not ready to give up of his self for them. He prayed for them. And then there was Moshe, who was just completely the ultimate. It's called Avarachman, the tremendously loving father who said, listen, these are, I'm the shepherd here. And so that is a progression. It's Noah, and then what Abraham did, and then eventually what Moshe did in mastering a level it's so far beyond that we can barely even imagine. All right, everyone, take care. See you next time.